Hey folks, I'm Chris DeLeon. I'm going to talk to you today about polish and how to polish your game, how to wrap it up well so that people will play it. This talk is done for IndieCade Climate Jam 2025. I'm the founder or co-founder of devpods.gg, formerly Home Team Game Dev. It is July 2025. Let's get right to it. So the reason this is so important as you're nearing the end of releasing your game, including freeware, is that the final 10%, 5%, whatever you consider your polish range, doing that well is going to affect whether people will see the other 90% of work you do. All of the other animations and models and music and level design, if you get the polish step wrong, people won't see it. You can think of it a little bit like the package layer, where if something is boxed wrong, has the wrong box art, has the wrong icon in a store, as unfortunate as it is, right? I know we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover. We do. And the same thing is going to come through in how people see screenshots. It's going to come through in their first impression when they play the game. It's going to come through in just these little signs of quality that if you get it right, it's going to play a key factor in many more people actually experiencing, honestly, the same core work you did. They're still making the game you did, the design, the enemies, the sounds, all the stuff you did. So the end polish, we can think of it as a commercial thing where it's essential for commercial games because without it, it's not going to survive. But even if you're doing this for a portfolio, if you're doing it for fun, if you're doing it just kind of express yourself, it's worth it because it's going to help your morale to make a game that you get the last few pieces put together and well on. So people will play it, so people will engage, talk about it, so people want to be teammates with you after doing it. Those are key things that will help keep you doing, again, even if it's non-commercial. So sometimes we hear polish and we think of like that's for commercial games only. A lot of the stuff, but also the neat thing about it, it doesn't even take a ton of time. It's just about taking a different lens to it than you might otherwise. Now, real quickly before we dive into it, I'm not going to read through all this stuff. I just want to kind of show and share a little bit my background, where I'm coming from. I've been involved with IndieCade for many, many years. I volunteered at E3 in 2007 with IndieCade. As a finalist and speaker in 2010, since then got involved as an organizer, gave some different talks over the years, including several online the past few years. Out of game development background, I've released over 100 games, but a ton of those are freeware. And again, even there, we have a concern for polish, but also did some commercial stuff, some EA years, Silicon Valley startup. Then we also did some casual games on mobile that did well, some freeware stuff that reached 7 million people. Well, we're right time, but most of my development has been freeware projects, games that we make for fun, for enrichment, for expressing ourselves, and still polish is a concern. I've got all kinds of YouTube content, podcasting, video courses, and so on. But my main mission in the past 20 years has been helping people on teams finish their first projects, initially in person. Eventually, I moved to helping people this remote. But for 20 years, I've been building communities that over 500 games have come out of. So I've seen and advised a lot of people going through this kind of phase from maybe they were doing kind of jam grade projects and then kind of leveling up a bit towards potentially career or just their own projects being bigger and more polished. That's kind of stuff we're talking about. The past decade for me was Home Team Game Dev. More recently, as of literally this weekend, it's becoming devpods.gg, where I'm organizing people to build projects together, helping put them on a good track using my systems. So let's get right to these tips here on the polish stuff. Number one tip to polish, and this is hard. It's like the hardest part of doing a lot of things is not doing everything else. You have to stop trying to add more stuff. It is so tempting when your mind is on mechanics, your mind is on engineering, your mind is on things that you like doing. Your mind's also probably stuck in the original vision you had in mind for the project. Is up until last minute. You want to keep cramming in more features, more stuff. I was supposed to have a second car the player could select. I was supposed to have this, that, and the other. Supposed to have these different items that I didn't get it to yet. The player's not going to know what you didn't get to. What they will notice is that you didn't spend time polishing. Polishing correctly is going to take time. And whether you're putting it to the last week or 2 weeks or 5 weeks or month of your project, whatever the scale of your project it's suitable for, you're going to have to stop adding more stuff in order to give proper attention to really doing polish right. It's not going to happen in addition to adding more stuff that's going to tie up your time instead of doing these things you want to do. One of the most important things you can do, and it can sound obvious, but I've seen so many times the mistake it made, I didn't bother. Just because you know what to do doesn't mean you don't have to do it. You need to create a simple playtesting form. Google Forms is totally fine for this. You want to focus on just a few questions. It can be tempting to ask a dozen things. The more questions you ask, the fewer responses you're going to get. And the most valuable thing for those questions, for some reason, a lot of people want to write the questions like, was it fun 1 to 10? The problem with that is if people say 3, you don't have any idea what to do with it, right? If you say, what'd you think of the art? They're like, I didn't like it. What do you do with that? You're not going to change it all in the time left. The questions that are useful to focus on is usability stuff. Were they confused? Did they know what to do? Did they get stuck? Right? Those kind of things. And don't think of it as just like playtesting for bugs, right? I mean, there's a scale at which that's relevant. That is important to have a place for that. But really, your focus here is if you don't do this and give them time, right? It takes time because you got to, part of why you don't want to save it till the very last minute, you need to make the form. You then need to share it with some people to playtest. Probably give them about a week, maybe ideally, at least a few days to play it and fill in the form. And then even after they fill in the form, you need time to implement those changes, right? Otherwise, you're just going to find out it's broken, but it's too late. So it takes a little bit of time depending on the scale and timeline of your project. But this is so essential because what happens if you don't have this is that people figure out that, you know what? We never actually explained to the player you could double jump. They got stuck at the start. We never actually told them that that key opens the inventory, which you have to use to get the key to open the first door to leave the first room. And I swear to you, I've seen it happen to dozens of games over the years where if they didn't bother to playtest, it would have helped them catch a pretty small thing that they could have given a tooltip, a prompt, even just made automatic, right? You have to press a button to translate something. No, it should happen automatically. Whatever it is that people get stuck or confused on, one playtest with just several people is enough to surface the worst of those issues. Now, obviously, those people out there who are UX-minded will know, like, yeah, you should playtest earlier, you should playtest throughout. All that's valid and true. I'm talking about the minimal stuff to make sure your thing is releasable. Because, again, these changes often aren't a ton of work. Another example we had for this game was a battleship game, and people were shooting at U.S. planes, not understanding the U.S. planes. And once we saw that coming up in testing, we just made it so a little U.S. flag appeared over the plane when you shot it, and people stopped doing it. It was not a hard fix. It was not time-consuming. But if we hadn't caught it, people were then shooting at planes that they couldn't damage because they're friendly targets and not the enemy targets. And it is so essential to run it by, this is also important, several people who never saw the game during development. Don't tell them anything the game has to tell them. It can be tempting to just, well, my teammates are playing it. No, because they heard you describe what to do. They've probably seen you play it. They know how it's supposed to be done. If it's your friend you've kept in the loop, you can't test with that person. It needs to be someone who hasn't seen you play it. And you're going to be tempted to tell them what the keys do. Don't. Your game has to explain it. Part of why this is also so valuable is even preparing to do this, you're going to find yourself injecting information into the game that you wish you could tell them over their shoulders. Because when your game gets released, you're not going to be able to tell anybody over their shoulders. Your game needs to self-contained to make clear what's the goal, where to go, how do I know what to do next, how do I know what my keys do, etc. Your game has to tell them, not you. So that's super important. The simple playtest form is what's going to be so critical to pulling that off as part of polishing. You want to revisit the tuning of numbers you made up as you went, but didn't revisit yet. This is the distinction between the engineer mindset. Certainly me, I had a programming background before I moved towards technical game design. And so I would like, okay, well, I needed the character to jump, now I can jump. I need the character to be able to shoot, now I can shoot. What I didn't go back to consider was, how high should the character jump? How floaty should it feel? How does it behave when I let go of the jump button mid-jump? In terms of shots, how fast are the projectiles? What's the rate of fire? What's the angular randomization or something else? But that's the difference between tuning, the design side, as opposed to, well, I got it working. There are enemies, they move around, so done and move on. Well, yeah, but as part of polishing, you got to go back and revisit. Is it moving the right speed? Is it animating at the right frame rate? Is it attacking with the right frequency? That's part of polish that if you don't do, your game may technically have the ingredients and be just a few really number tweaks in a few cases. Occasionally it's math, algorithm changes, but often just number tweaks away from being much better. And that's going to take a separate attentional pass. Again, the time you could be tempted, especially if you have an engineer mentality like I do, to go in and rewire and add more stuff. Instead, go back to the stuff you already have and make it count by making it feel better, move better, be more responsive, give the player, maybe they need a telegraphing hint that the enemy's about to attack, right? Whatever clues you got to give them, but that's going to come from revisiting that stuff that you hadn't revisited yet. As part of that tuning, your game is probably too hard for anyone who didn't work on it. A lot of us like challenging games. It's part of what drives a lot of us to the game's space, or we like competition. All that's valid. The thing of it is, when you made it, you have been practicing this game since it started. You also know under the hood why and how and when the enemies are going to do certain things, exactly the weaknesses of how certain weapons behave or how certain items can be leveraged to their maximum effect. Other people don't know that. And the second you put it in someone else's hands, what you're typically going to find is that the game is going to be so just unfair to them. Frankly, full-on unfair. Again, they're not going to see the rest of the great work you did. You're going to need to dial that back. And unfortunately, because it's so deeply rooted in you, right, this is part of why testing with people who didn't see your game and didn't work on it is so important. Because something you can't do with experience is get a fresh set of eyes to not know what you know. We're just not wired that way. Part of what you're going to get through playtesting with others is that, I didn't get past level 1. Oh my goodness, they didn't see any of the great artwork and level design I did in level 2, and it's going to be what helps convince you to dial it back. This is something we got to tell a lot of people a lot of times. It takes time to set in. Most of us make our first few games too hard. You can avoid that, hopefully, if you're conscious of your game is probably too hard for anyone who didn't work on it. You need to hide evidence of things you didn't fit in. This is part of polish. It's not just shining what's already there. A couple examples come to mind for this. We had a game where there was a level select screen out of one of my communities, probably 20 years ago. There was a level select screen with only one level on it. And so I told the team, just hide the level select screen. Just hide the part of the UI that lets you do that. sweeping under the rug, keeping in mind, even if your team knew what you meant to do up front, your players typically won't, unless you leave these kind of loose ends showing. Just try to find ways to make it not obvious what you didn't get to. They're not going to know the difference. What they will know is if you kind of left it rough around the edges. It also, again, think about this, isn't a ton of work because you're literally hiding stuff out. You're commenting things out. You are hiding an element in the inspector in Unity or Godot or Unreal, whatever you're doing. But it's something where you just need to bury the right things selectively and carefully to leave what's stronger there, to leave what's there stronger for a better first impression, for a better sense of what's here is well done, versus some half-baked stuff that's going to really spoil and distract from the things you did that really came out well. You need to do a pass, and this is separate from those numbers tuning things, for juice, for UI, for transitions, for stronger spectacle feedback on gameplay. We'll get to that in a moment. Right? And juice, and this word's get used a lot of ways in the game industry over the years. JW did a great talk on this many years ago. It's still considered canonical. But it's just things like the game stuttering for a moment when an intense explosion happens. It's stuff like screen shake. Obviously, maybe one accessibility option to turn that off and make some people nauseous. But it can be various levels of where the UI, some games when you lose health, it just drops instantly. Other games, it moves down. Or maybe even like rolls on a counter. Something else gives you visual feedback that's happening. Or when you pick up hearts, do they flash to show you have more hearts? Those serve a function of calling the player's attention to it. They also just make it feel much more polished and professional. Same thing for transitions, in terms of if you just go straight from one screen to another, it's very abrupt. That's functional. That's fine when you're working on it. It is a huge difference. And this is part of the bottom. Play any commercial game you like and take detailed notes on how they do it. How do they do screen transitions? You'll find all the time they slide one thing off or they slide one thing on. They fade from one screen to another. They have a thing that expands and the logo shrinks back down and captures as the transition happens. Those transitions are meaningfully part of the experience. This is also where spectacle feedback to gameplay, and this more so is for things especially that you want to encourage and reward the player to do. I was a pinball researcher during my grad school years, wrote my thesis on it, about the relationship between pinball design and game design and history and so on. It's a whole other topic for another day, but spectacle is a big part of that. We're part of how we guide the player to repeatedly do things is, okay, if they hit that ramp and we want them to hit that ramp again, we got lights going off on the thing, we got sounds and bells going off. How can you use your game's spectacle, particles and things, to give them feedback for like, oh, that's the part of the boss you're supposed to hit, right? Again, it's functional, but it's also satisfying. It's like watching fireworks. We enjoy it. It's trying to find a way to add spectacle to things where you want to make sure the player knows, oh, they're supposed to be getting those. Those are good to get. They're not supposed to be touching those. That's bad to touch. Give them visual feedback. It's functional. It's also just going to be helping the game feel more professional as you polish it. You got to learn to see style as substance if it's done a certain way. And this took me a long time to get used to. I have a very functional, practical brain, just the way I'm shaped, where I would think in terms of what sounds I need because those are gameplay events. And I'd forget about the fact that we also need sounds like crickets and stuff to establish that I'm in the jungle or a forest or the plains or whatever. It's something where, yeah, we need art for, items. We need art for enemies. We need art for obstacles and ladders. But we also need art to decorate the fact that establishes where are we, right? Are we on a spaceship, whatever? So learning to see how style can be substance, whether it's art, whether it's sound that wasn't strictly necessary, those can make a big difference in polish. If you've got some animated elements in the background, again, they're not interactive. You can't collide with them. They don't affect the enemies in the foreground, but that will help it come across the line as much more polished. And maybe if animation is going to be time consuming, get some windmills that spin with code or something. Do something to breathe life. Get some shooting stars in the night sky. It's just going to feel that much more polished and doesn't take necessarily a ton of work. Could even be done through a particle system or something. Where possible, it's great if you can show them something novel and memorable. Those are things that can come across best and most really help you stand out. When there's so many people making games, a lot of what's going to happen is the easy things to do are being done by everybody else. If you can make something so when you destroy a model, all the polygons shatter, that's going to stand apart in people's minds. They're not used to seeing that. Doesn't mean you're the first or only person to do it. It means that they haven't seen it yet, or they haven't seen it in a while, or your approach to it's a little bit different. That might involve some special casing of stuff. It might involve doing some things like, so for example, okay, how are the polygons shattering? Maybe that'd be really, really hard to do, to write an algorithm to piece apart the mesh and do all this general stuff. If all you're doing is hand tuning some particle systems to throw out some triangles, but you're calculating over in Blender how many green triangles, how many purple triangles, how many brown triangles, so you can fake that effect with a special particle per thing, it's going to help get that effect across. And again, be more memorable because people haven't seen it as much. But how'd you do it? Well, I kind of hard-coded it a bit. But as we're nearing release, where it's easier for us to make these kind of changes, where we don't need to design a robust, infinite, scalable solution. We're nearing the finish line. If we're not going to be maintaining this game as live service or something for years to come, that is the time to start making some special case trade-offs for what's going to be more memorable, what's going to stand out, something they haven't seen before. How can we do that? When I say style of substance, what I mean by this, right, is it's like I don't know, not to pick on it, but like I enjoyed the movie Tron Legacy. I know it's a contentious thing. Some people are not a fan of it, etc. But the thing about it is, I don't care for the plot. I don't care for the characters. I don't care for the story. Just the spectacle alone. The style is engaging enough to me. The music by Daft Punk is engaging enough to me. And if it is pretty enough, it is sparkly, it sounds good, then actually that is part of what we're there for. We're just there to be entertained. Separate from mechanically is it balanced, separate from is the story compelling, whatever. If it just looks really pretty and I like it going into my eyeballs, if it just sounds really satisfying and I like hearing it, that's part of what we're here for, right? Keep in mind our goal is to engage the imagination, to entertain the player, to be memorable and stand out. That's part of what polish can do. But it literally is adding meaningfully to the substance of your game to prioritize this polished stuff near the end, even if it's not just pure practical mechanical. You'll want to add a few things because they show well in a video reel. And my favorite example for this, so back when I was starting, so like I said, I'm doing devpods.gg now. It began as Home Team Game Dev, several rebrands prior back in 2015. And our first game was called Galaxy Breacher, but it was like these space games with these enormous boss ships. And that was what I was all about. These big old boss ships where like the level is an enemy boss ship with big laser cannon turrets to knock out and all this kind of fanciness. But the bosses were all really distinct looking. And what I realized was they weren't really coming across in like video clips of the game because you just see little pieces of these big ships. So what I did was I wanted for the trailer a camera to kind of slowly orbit and focus on each boss so I could show that in the trailer video. And I really think it helped come across, like, look at the huge variety and interestingness of these different types of spaceships and battles you're going to be fighting in this big old space dragon and the galaxies and whatever. But that also looked good in game, right? I wasn't like faking that for the trailer. I kept that in the game. So at the start of each level, it establishes a shot that shows like, this is the boss you're facing. And that can work for levels. This thing I liked in GoldenEye 64 back in 1997. You can add some things because they're going to show on a video reel. They're going to stand out better in a trailer, but then leave that in the game. Whether it's a cinematic camera mode, whether it's a replay, whether it's whatever it is that you got to be able to do, add it in the game. It's going to be more polished in the game, and it's also going to show better in a video reel. Keeping in mind, too, a lot of people just realistically are going to be watching a video who may never play your game. They may only experience it as a video. Again, though, we want to not fake that stuff. Go ahead and implement something in the game that helps you show, oh gosh, it'd be really cool if there was a camera that could pan across the level real fast or something, or show me a mini-map in a different way. Take time to do it for the game as a part of polish. It's going to show better in your videos as well. But that's it. I want to keep it short because I know you've got a game to finish. Thank you for listening. I'm Chris DeLeon, the co-founder of DevPods. Find out more about my new latest thing, check out DevPods.gg. Best of wishes on finishing your games. I know it's going to come out amazing.